All right, welcome everybody. I'm Autumn Phillips, Executive Editor of the Post and Courier. Thanks everyone for pivoting at the last minute from an in-person event to a virtual event. We saw enough statewide interest in this topic that it made sense to share the lessons from Spartanburg with the rest of the state. The forum is being hosted by the Post and Courier's Education Lab. We launched the lab more than a year ago. We did it for one reason, and that was to encourage reform in the public education system in South Carolina with a steady, constant voice, exposing the gaps and celebrating the successes. We believe in something called solutions journalism. We seek out schools, teachers, and districts that are doing something right, and we study it. We look at the data and make sure it's true. We look at the research to make sure that the methodology is sound, and then we share what we've learned in hopes that others can replicate the success. What happened at Gettys Broome High School is such an inspiration. The idea is simple and it's complex. Today, we'll talk more about what they did to boost graduation rates. Our moderator is Sarah Gregory. She's a reporter with the Education Lab working out of our Upstate newsroom. She'll be talking to Rodney, who's been the principal at Gettys Broome High School for 8 years. He's been in education for 35 years, working in Spartanburg, in Rock Hill, York, and North Carolina. And Jermaine Greene, assistant principal at Gettys Broome High School, his alma mater. He's been assistant principal there for 15 years. Thank you for being here. Before I turn it over to Sarah, we'll be recording tonight's conversation, and anyone who signed up will get a link in your email tomorrow of the recording so you can share it with others who you think might be interested. Now for our conversation. Sarah?
Thanks so much, Autumn. And looking forward to talking with you two again. It's been about a year since I visited Broome, and I'm excited to hear what you guys are still doing, what's changed, and how the last year has gone. To start off, Jermaine, since Broome is your alma mater and you now work there, can you, for people who haven't visited the school, can you start by telling everyone what the school is like and sort of what the culture is there?
So Broome is about 900 students approximately, small community school, founded in the areas of the Upper East Side of Spartanburg County, which includes Cowpens, the town of Cowpens, the town of Packlet, and other areas, which includes Glendale, Clifton, the Cannons area, and Converse. So that kind of entitles where all of our students come from. But it's really community-based. I mean, a lot of things are just based upon values and being close and knowing one another and a real family atmosphere. So it's not like people don't know each other because you're from Cowpens or from Packlet. Once we all assemble in the school, we kind of get to know each other, and we kind of just have a culture that is aligned with family and values and being connected to one another.
Yeah, that was one of the things that stood out when I visited. I talked with teachers who had taught several generations of students in a family, and so not only do they know the students, they know their parents, they know their cousins. And can you talk a little bit about like what those close family connections, like how that helps the school and help you connect with students? And this question is for either of you.
Well, I guess I'll go first. What we've done a lot over the time I've been here is built upon relationships and trying to strengthen relationships and making those positive connections. Mr. Graves says it all the time, and we really have embodied that, and that's been part of our mantra and our mindset, and just being intentional and consistent in trying to strengthen relationships. It does help that if you have a good relationship with someone's parent, or you did go to school with them and they remember you well and fondly, that kind of helps when it comes to dealing with their children. Or if I was a person's assistant principal 15 years ago and they now may have children, or they have cousins, and they recall how it was when they were in school and how they were treated, that kind of builds credibility. So over the last 8 years with Mr. Graves, it's been consistent what we do in order to serve our students first, but also to work with our community members and those who we form relationships with in terms of partnerships outside of the school, which has helped tremendously. But being consistent has really made that work in terms of how we can make sure that everyone is understanding what we're trying to do in terms of serving the students at the school.
That's 8 years ago. One of the main things we emphasized was we're going to do it if it's best for kids, and we'll do it if it's best for students and staff. But if it's just good for the adults, we're probably not going to spend any time on doing that, because we want to create a culture that's a good place to learn, a good place to work. It's a place where our students want to come every day, and it's a place where our staff wants to come every day. We want to celebrate the positives. We want to constantly echo what we do well, but we also want to be realistic. We're not perfect. We find things that we want to work on by communicating with our families, with our students, with our staff. And each year we set out several goals that we want to achieve. And graduation rate just is always one of those goals, because we're not going to be successful in this community, in this state, and in this nation if our students first don't graduate from high school. And we really emphasize that really the high school diploma is the most important any student gets, because without this one, no other degrees are possible if they don't attain that high school diploma.
Yeah, so I know the work to help students get to graduation, it starts when they walk in the door as freshmen, maybe even starts as 8th graders. Can you guys talk about what that process looks like when a student enters Broome? What kind of conversations do you have with them, and how do those conversations change as students get further along in their high school careers?
I think the big discussion is that the clock starts ticking as far as an on-time graduation rate when they enter the door. We've got 8 semesters for them to count as an on-time graduate. And we're not just about the numbers, we're about what's best for that child. Research shows that if a student's retained in the 9th grade, they're more likely to drop out. So we want to make sure they're putting effort, and we emphasize that transcript starts day one. If they took high school credit in the 8th grade, that transcript has begun as far as earning credits, getting them closer to graduation. So a lot of children and students don't understand that 9th grade year is really more important than the others, because some students dig themselves a hole that is very hard to get out of if they're trying to attain scholarship money, life scholarship money down the road. As they go, especially our guidance department does a great job keeping them focused with the IGP process, the individual graduation plans, and that's something that can change year to year. Student may not be planning to go to a 4-year college, but we want them to plan as if they are, because if they wait to their senior year to make that decision, for many of them, it's too late to go to college or go to a 4-year school. So we want to have that discussion, that expectation up front with parents and students, talk about all the options that we offer here.
So to echo some things that Mr. Graves may have omitted, our 8th grade comes to visit our school every year that's been possible for as long as I've been here. They come and they take a tour in the spring. We've grown it, so we've kind of partnered it with our college and career fair. So in recent years, what we do is we have our 8th graders come and they tour the building. We meet with them, we let them walk the building, but they also get to come to the college and career fair. So they get to kind of see what careers they may be interested in and colleges. So it becomes actually real and attainable. It's not like, well, that doesn't exist. So when they get here, we've done some orientations to try to get them more acclimated to the school. But really, we try to be consistent in what we say. So what we say when they enter is what they'll hear weekly, daily, monthly, yearly. So it doesn't change in terms of what our overall expectations are for our students, and we're honest with it. So being genuine, if I could use that, the entire time helps, because at first they don't know you, they don't know us, so they're trying to figure out exactly, are they for real and what they expect out of us. But when they see that it's consistent, that buy-in comes, and we're long-term in our goals. So we know at the very beginning it may be a little rough around the edges when you're talking about freshmen, But as they mature, as they become sophomores and juniors and then seniors, they start to see what we were speaking about and why we were trying to do certain things with them and why we had assemblies or why we mentioned certain things constantly, because they are the future. So we just want them to be able to take advantage of the opportunity that comes with earning a high school diploma, regardless of whether they're going to go to 4-year, 2-year, college, career, military. We know that the opportunity lies in them obtaining a diploma. So we want to push that, and we try to be very intentional in our efforts.
Jermaine, you just mentioned you were talking about the importance of like genuine relationships. And I remember when we first talked, you talked about how, you know, students can see through it if you're being fake or you're not genuine. Can you talk a little bit more about how you show students that you're being genuine?
So we have a family here. So a lot of times we've talked about recently, I talked with a colleague and we talked about, you got to be vulnerable. So sometimes you have to actually show yourself to students. Right now, when they first come, you're just an administrator or you're another teacher. When we do things or implement programs such as Centurions Connect and they sponsor a club, or you see your teacher on duty and you have a conversation with them, that kind of helps you to be able to see them more as a person, not just another teacher. And then there are conversations. So being able to have conversations or being able to call a student over and ask them how they're doing, or letting them know that you saw them at a game, or ask them how their parents are doing because you know them, or, you know, just checking in. They don't seem like they're doing okay, and you just ask about them. So it's really simple principles as being caring and compassionate, and letting them know that you care. That really brings down barriers. I mean, and sometimes it can be a myriad of people in our building, but usually it can just be one person that student connects with, and that can make the difference between whether they're going to graduate on time or not want to be connected with coming to school. But that's why everybody in the building has value, because they all play a role. And for some that I may not connect with, Mr. Graves may connect with, or we may not connect with, but another assistant principal or another teacher may connect with it. It may be a guidance counselor. It may be the club that they come to that helps them kind of find a purpose in coming to school. And then the academic part becomes a little bit more important, but it's because they've made a connection, because we've been open and honest with them.
That makes a lot of sense. So you do something very special when students get to their senior year. And this was really interesting to me when I was talking with you guys and asking, you know, how did you grow the graduation? I loved hearing about this process. So over the summer, your guidance counselors go through the list of seniors and they divide the list out amongst educators, and everyone gets four students, and it's every educator in the building. So you guys as well. I was wondering, could you share with everyone a little bit more about that process and why you started it and why you found it to be really effective?
Sure. Sarah, that's probably been one of the things that you look back on and you say, well, that wasn't that big of a deal, but it was that big of a deal. Many times in schools, graduation rate is just for a certain group of teachers that are teaching those seniors. Well, we understand it's not just their senior year. We understand it's not just certain teachers. Every educator in this building has to have buy-in that graduation rate is important, whether it's a guidance counselor, a principal, assistant principal, and all certified teachers. So we just wanted to make one more opportunity for those students, our seniors, to have a connection with an adult in the building. Our adults in the building are assigned 3 or 4 students, and they're from different academic levels. They get a student from the top third of the GPA rank, they get a student or 2 in the middle GPA rank, and they get a student in the bottom, because we don't want my group to be all the high flyers, and my job would be easy as far as getting those students across the stage. So everybody has a different group. We also were intentional in that it's not necessarily students I pick, it's random, so I have to get to know them. I have to spend some time to understand who they are, what makes them tick, another person in the building that's connecting with them. And then it's my job to follow up with them, whether it's attendance, if I see they're in discipline issues. Every time we have grades, I will follow up with my students and touch base with them. And that's what our teachers are doing. And parents, I think, appreciate that, knowing there's one more time that another adult is focused on their child walking across the stage and graduating. It's become competitive with us. Dr. Greene was bragging today that as long as we've been doing this, he's never had one not graduate. So I guess he's 100% graduation rate. I've had one not, so I'm not as good as Dr. Greene at this. But it is that important. We take it seriously, but it's really something that we look back on, and we didn't think it was that big of a deal to begin with, but it really is that extra connection, that extra care, and a way to check in on our students.
So if I'm giving advice, one of the things that we've done is we all take a piece of the pie. So Mr. Graves made sure that everybody, assistant principals, sometimes if everybody got 3, we might get 4. Or if everybody got 4, we probably get 5. And if we get 5, we probably get 2 at the lower level than 2 at the higher level, which is fine. So that entails that everybody sees that we work to try to do the same service as everyone else. And that transforms the building. Over the years, we've done a lot of things in our district. We've talked about shifting our mindset. We've had our motto to be all in, every child, every day, whatever it takes. And, at first you're trying to figure out, well, what does that mean? Well, that may mean having every teacher have a group of seniors to make sure that they get across the stage. That helped for us to meet certain goals and expectations that were given to us. But everybody buying in has been huge in transforming the building. And again, being able to say those things over time and it not change. Like, we don't let conditions change what we're going to do. And that's true when we started this, even if it was COVID in 2020, if we had the hybrid schedule in 2020, 2021, we're still doing the same things. And sometimes we might have a bump and people want to abandon it, but it works. You just have to, trust the process. And that trust of the process has allowed us to consistently have graduation rates that work. And our teachers, they do some outside of the box things to try to make sure that the students that they serve know that they care. Some do a little bit more than others, but they still show that they care, which is one reason why we're able to get more people to graduate than not.
I was wondering if you could talk about, when you're assigned these students at the start of the school year, what is your first step when you're meeting these students? I'm sure you know them, but maybe some of them you don't know them well. What does that first conversation, like when the two of you are doing this, what does that first conversation look like? And I also imagine it's probably a little intimidating if you're a student who gets assigned to the principal or the assistant principal. How do you handle that, and how do you make them feel comfortable?
Okay, so that's not going to be the way it usually is, because by the time they've gotten to senior year, they've seen us and know that, although we could be intimidating, Graves over here is probably not. He is no nonsense at all times. So that really makes it relaxed for anybody who meets with Graves. It doesn't really matter. Now, me, I'm not as no nonsense as Graves, but again, actions and being present and available kind of help break that. At first, it's kind of hard to deal with me because I may be the person who's dealt with disciplinary stuff, or I had to call a parent, or I had to bring you in because the teacher wanted me to talk to you. So that takes a little bit more time. But again, consistency helps. So really in the first conversation, because the goal is to talk about academics and trying to make sure you graduate. So we're talking about how well you've done. We have access to your information. So what are you struggling in? What can we do for you? What do you feel like you're going to need the most help? Do I need to do A, B, C, and D to try to help you out? And then, impromptu, if I decide that, I have a note to check on one of my students or check my students' grades, not when the progress reports come out, but I just happen to see, or somebody emails me and says, Greene, he's struggling in my class. You might want to talk to him. So I'm going to go find that person and we're going to have a conversation. And, you know, it could be as simple as calling their parent and letting them know that, hey, this is not working. We need to try to do a little bit better. You know, they're putting themselves at risk for graduation, or it can be as simple as, I'm going to post your grades to my wall, and in 2 weeks, I'm going to come back and check with you again. And I expect them to be better. If they're not, we'll do something different. So, I mean, it's an expectation. And again, when somebody knows that you expect something out of them, they tend to want to perform more. And that's really simple. Just knowing that somebody's actually checking in on you or connecting to you.
I think Dr. Greene's right on the money. And I think in some places, schools spend so much time dealing with the discipline and those things, rather than saying, this is a positive thing. Your graduation means something to you. It means something to us, and we can get past the day-to-day operation of school. It's much more intentional. It's much more in depth, that we care about the whole person. It's not just about the math grade. It's not just about what they're doing on athletics or in music or arts, those kind of things. It's how they're doing as a person. Being a teenager today, in my opinion, is harder than it's ever been. They're being pushed in so many different directions by a lot of things that are not positive. And I think having that connection with us, many times that I've had students that are struggling, it's another opportunity for a different voice to talk to them about the situation they're in. And it's another way to get extra help for that student, whether it's through counseling or through our social work or those type things as well. But I think it says a lot about our teachers and our community and the people in the building, and the families really appreciate that we're following up and checking on their children. We're all on the same team. The parents have the same goal as we do. We want their child to graduate. We want them to be successful. We want them to be college and career ready. And whatever their path is, we want them to be prepared to get there.
Jermaine, you mentioned that you've seen teachers do some really out of the box things to help their students. And can you share more of like what you've seen teachers do?
Well, the fact that we have Centurions Connect, which is our hour-long lunch, every teacher, every faculty member has duty. So at some point, if you're on duty, you probably can find your student. We also, during Centurions Connect, have office hours. So they have primary tutorial once a week, secondary tutorial another time a week, and then they have a club and an activity another time. So there's plenty of opportunities to make those connections. But outside of the box things, you get your kid a remind and you send them that. You form a connection with the parent, and there's constant emails or texts. Texts usually work better. Their morning phone calls, their evening phone calls. There may be a meal, there may be an incentive or something that's reached because we're just trying to help them figure it out. So, I mean, that comes from our guidance department. I mean, it's any and everybody, but it's really figuring out what's going to help the kid figure out why this is important. And sometimes it takes a little while. Sometimes it's as simple as working with a student on a subject that they're having a hard time understanding. Sometimes it's actually finding the kid and making them be with you so that they can get work done, or just be in your room so that this is getting turned in, because this is the difference between passing and failing. So it's not that it's complicated and it's cost a lot. It's really just, again, being caring and compassionate and saying, hey, look, this is your opportunity that's in front of you. And in your future, the future of our students has to be bigger than the opinions or what we've done in the past, because the students are the future. So if we can't give them the opportunity that comes with earning their high school diploma, then where is our hope? So that's, I mean, as an educator and a parent, that's what we want. And that's, why we have been successful, not really making it complicated. We really keep it simple. But, a statement that we've made as parents, but serving as educators is, put yourself in a position as if this was your child. So what would you want if it was your own kid? you would want to make sure your kid was in the position that they would be able to graduate. So that's kind of how it works.
That you mentioned it doesn't cost any money to do this, right? But it does take a lot of time on educators. And so I'm wondering if you could talk about sort of how you got buy-in from staff for this. And I think some of the things you talked about earlier about making sure the workload's even and making sure those sort of things. But can you talk about, like, was it hard to get buy-in from teachers because they're doing so many things already? So I'm sure there was potentially some conversations on the front end of, like, you want me to do this too? So how did you get past that?
Absolutely, Sarah. And that's one thing I think is different here. We try to work together, our staff, administration, and guidance. We don't believe in this is my idea and we're going to do it. We had discussion for years, the first 2 years that I was here. And one of the main things that stood out is there is no reason that only 75% of our students were graduating. We took it personal, the educators in this building, and then we, as a team, decided or discussed what are some ways to address this. And in that discussion, this came about. And when you get buy-in from team members, that everybody says, my job will be easier if students aren't failing my course. My job will be easier if they're turning in the work on time. My job will be easier if they're coming to school every day. So in the big picture, I think by us spending this time, which is not a huge amount of time, on small pockets of time throughout the year, it's an investment to make it easier for our teachers to accomplish their goals, and their goals every year to help students graduate as well. And that buy-in on the front end was critical, as you mentioned, and it was a team decision in our school. That's how we operate. And it was easy for it to be successful because everybody took ownership. Everybody's responsible for our young people graduating.
Okay, man, look, Graves is being real nice, but he is a master of strategy and getting buy-in. So the statement that would be made for anyone who is listening is, it's just another thing that we have to do. So what we did when we were looking at whether we wanted to implement Power Hour, which is our Centurions Connect lunch hour, and the AVID program, was we had visits. So we would set aside a group. I was responsible at the time for Centurions Connect and Power Hour. So we went to 3 different schools. We made a visit every quarter with a different group of teachers to allow them to see how it worked in different places. We went to a large school in Spartanburg who had already implemented it. We went to another school in Greenville who had implemented it, and went to a school comparable to our size in North Carolina who had already implemented it. And we allowed our teachers to see that. And at every ride, we had a conversation coming back. And then we did a follow-up. So, they talked about what they saw and we took the input, but they all saw what the potential was. So once we have implemented it and we've seen what it can do, because it eliminates the excuse in our community or with our students that they don't have enough time to meet with a teacher or see their teacher or get to their teacher. That's gone. We can't meet after school because I have to work. That's eliminated. So, and now it's not just one more thing to do. Everybody has duty at least once a week. Everybody has primary tutorial. We have the opportunity to have departmental meetings in the middle of the school day. So that kind of made it easy. And being effective and efficient with the time that we have, that made the buy-in that now we won't be eliminating Centurions Connect anytime soon.
Well, I think that's a good thing when teachers see the impact that they're having. So many times teachers feel like that, as you said, they're getting more and more things to do, but they're not really seeing the reward for that. Our teachers, by having a really small group, can really focus on those 3 or 4 students. And they see immediate feedback on May the 25th or 26th each year when they walk across that stage. And that sort of rejuvenates us. Hey, we're going to do it again next year. And we're going to get even more across that stage because we don't want it to be seen as just, well, here's one more thing we got to do. By doing this, I think it eliminates other things they have to do. Students failing courses and having to retake, students having to stay after school, all those kinds of things. This is effective, so it lessens the load in other areas.
Rodney, you mentioned you've had one student who didn't make it to graduation. I'm wondering, could both of you talk about the the students who were the biggest sort of struggle and challenge, and how you worked with them, and how maybe that was that required a different approach from students who were, already on a path to
Sure.
graduation.
Every year at graduation, and Dr. Greene and I he usually calls their names and I'm up there shaking their hand, but at practice, we'll come back after practice and I say, man, there were some miracles that walked across that stage. And after graduation, because we had some that were struggling so bad, they had home issues, they had academic issues, they got in some trouble, all those things that happen in a teenager's life. And what we try to do is let teenagers understand it's not going to be easy. Life's not going to be easy. They're going to have to overcome challenges and hurdles, and you got to be willing to ask for help. And I think that's what's really helped our students the most. They understand if they do their part, we're certainly going to do our part to get them across the stage so that they graduate. We don't want them to think that that's the most important thing in the world, but if they're having health issues, if they're having home issues, those type things, this district, this community, our district office, our board, our staff, we believe in each one of these students, and they know that. And I think that makes a big difference.
So sometimes it's not always pleasant. Sometimes folks are angry. Sometimes we have to, do our jobs as administrators, and that may mean that somebody may be absent or they may be excused for some time, but it doesn't mean that we don't love them, nor does it mean we don't care about them. That we always try to make sure that they understand, even in the whatever may happen, that we're not being disrespectful, and we understand that life happens for everyone. So, in dealing with trauma, we've had COVID, but there's been other traumas that students bring to the table that make it a challenge. But again, compassion, checking in, our guidance counselors check in constantly. I mean, I think we have senior meetings at least 3 times during the year, and that's outside of the mentor groups. We meet at the beginning of the year, we meet at the middle of the year, and then there's a meeting as we get close to the year. As administrators, we meet with the seniors at the beginning of the year. We meet with them near February. We meet with them again near March or right after spring break. So there's constant conversations. It's not like they didn't hear it. It wasn't stated. We haven't, communicated to them. Again, in relationships, what makes things work is the ability to effectively communicate. That's in any relationship. Effective communication makes a relationship work. So with students, sometimes you have to figure out what's the best way for me to effectively communicate. But as a parent, a lot of times that's saying the same thing so that they can hear it. And sometimes they don't hear it. And sometimes it takes 3 times, and sometimes it takes 30 times for them to hear it, but they keep hearing it, and eventually it will take, I promise it will take, more often than not. And even if that means you have to show, you have to be tough but fair, they respect that. And that might be the very thing that gets them to decide that this is really important.
Jermaine, you've mentioned Centurions Connect. This is what you guys call the lunch hour at your school, and it's one lunch period. I think that that's a setup that is different from what a lot of us experienced in high school. But like you mentioned, before you implemented it at Broome, you had toured other high schools in the Upstate and in North Carolina that are doing this. Can you just sort of share like what that 1 hour lunch block looks like, and why you thought that it would be a good fit?
So I agree with Graves. Again, this was one of the studies in terms of what can we do to maximize what we have at our school. And when we talked about why our graduation rate might have been lacking, we were trying to get people to stay after school. Well, let's be honest. Unless you want to stay after school, kids do not want to stay after school. So again, what worked? And Mr. Graves found an article that mentioned Power Hour. He gave it to the administrative team to study. We looked at it, we thought about it, we talked about it in summertime. We said, well, that's something that we would implement that we think could be good for our school. South Carolina has college and career readiness standards, and those things embody how do you maximize time? a college and career going atmosphere. So once we got buy-in, is the ability to be involved in extracurricular activities, to have clubs that students decide are good clubs here that they want to be more involved in. So they kind of drive what clubs can be implemented. We have some teachers who implement clubs that students find interesting and they want to be involved in. So for us, when the bell rings, everybody goes to lunch. We try to make sure that primary tutorial for each core subject area, we kind of have 5 core subject areas that we consider to be our 5 big ones, which are math, English, science, social studies, and then foreign language. We still have other departments that have primary tutorial times. They may be on the second half, and they may be paired with another subject area, but most of the time, students kind of get those accomplished, but they still have a primary tutorial time. So that first 30 minutes, first 28 minutes, they go to primary tutorial. If their grade is below a certain grade, they have, that is more of a recommendation or requirement. It does not mean that a kid who is doing well or a student who is doing well cannot go and be with a teacher to improve a grade or work on the grade that they have, or just work for another class. One of the conversations we're having now is, again, shifting people that even though I may not be required or recommended to attend, I can still go spend time in a classroom and work on my other things, because I may have a baseball game or a football game, or I may have to work later this evening, and I can get this done within this hour. So I don't have to do it when I get off work. Again, it's shifting the mentality that they have to learn how to manage their time and understand that this is an opportunity for them to get things complete while they have an expert present versus not, because when you go off to school or you go to work, you're going to elicit the help of somebody in order to either keep your job or keep yourself in school. So why not try to work on developing those habits earlier?
We really emphasize that it's similar when you go to college. You're going to have a gap in your school day in college. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, maybe you can take a break. Maybe you can go play basketball. Maybe you can go play volleyball. That's what we do. If you're struggling academically in college, your college professor is going to have office hours, and that's basically what we've created. If you're in college and want to get more engaged, you go participate in clubs and organizations on campus. But it also helps our teachers, because in the past, they got frustrated when a child was absent. They had to stay after school to make up work. As Dr. Greene said, that's gone now. They make that up during the school day. Other things that benefit our teachers by doing the lunch hours, their departments meet during that lunch hour. They don't have to meet after school. So we've tried to find ways, as we talked about earlier, that we're not just adding things to teacher. We're trying to work smarter, not harder and longer. We're trying to do things that can be done during the day, and it eliminates those excuses. When a parent asks us, what do y'all do to help my child? He's struggling. We say, we've got tutoring every day. And if they say, oh, I didn't know that, that really changes the dynamic of that discussion, that they know that we're offering that to their child every day. They can get help in the building during the school day.
So there's obviously this academic component to the Power Hour, the Lunch Centurion Connect, but there's also this, you mentioned the extracurricular activities, and I know that that's a big draw for students. A lot of them who maybe are struggling with academics, they want to go and participate in these extracurricular activities. So can you talk about, I remember when I was there, you were telling me all about some of the different clubs that are there. How have those grown, and how have you seen students get more engaged in school and their academic pursuits because they're maybe drawn in for this extracurricular activity?
Just one club, for an example, FCA, and our school had a strong FCA, but they met at 7:15 in the morning. So that club had 15 or 20 people showing up. That same club meeting during the school day, we had to find a bigger space because they're running 40, 50, 60 people participating in that. And we don't just do the traditional clubs. If a student is interested in it and they can get a staff member to sponsor it and we can get it approved, we've got a karaoke club. So you're in a high school at 11:30 and they just need some time to decompress. Some of our students that are AP students and they just need some time away for a few minutes, they're in that club. We've got some gaming clubs. We've got gardening. We've got different things going on. And I think it is important, and our students have done better. They go to 2 classes and they get an hour break for lunch or tutoring or whatever, and then they're ready to go for another 2 classes. And I think that's changed the mindset of our students. It's let them have something to look forward to. In previous years, you'd have 2 or 3 lunches, and it was always a scheduling nightmare because I wanted to be at lunch with my friend. So I might even choose a class just so I could go to lunch with somebody. We don't have any of those issues anymore. Everybody's at lunch together. And if you're doing what you're supposed to do academically, you choose how you spend that hour.
Behaviorally as well. Graves mentioned the garden club, which has been a huge success, because you think of things that, kids might not be, drawn to, but, we've been able to we have a space where we've actually seen our garden flourish, and they've really gotten involved and learned how to garden. So that's been beneficial. We've had previously we've had Dungeons and Dragons. We had a student that was really into that, and a teacher that was into it as well. That provided a huge connection. We've got chess club. We have Model Arab League. We have our SGA, our Student Government Association, meets during that hour. Just a myriad of things. We've got coloring book club. We've got board games. I'm trying to think. We've had some of our teachers come outside and they may throw the fridge. But again, it's letting the students see us as people. We're just people with a purpose to try to help make sure that they can get a complete educational experience. It's not just about academics, but it's a total educational experience that we're after. And when kids see that it's not just I come to school and I have to learn what's in a book, but I can actually connect with people, they're a little bit more drawn to the complete experience, and with the primary purpose, earning the diploma that is going to open up opportunities for them later in life.
Y'all talked a little bit about how by moving these types of activities to the middle of the school day, you're allowing more students to participate who might not be able to otherwise. I'm thinking, students who have to work in the afternoons or don't have transportation to stay after school for something, or student athletes who have practice or something like that. Can you talk about how moving these activities has increased students' ability to participate more fully in just all aspects of high school experience?
So the name we came up with was Centurions Connect. Again, we really try to make it simple, Sarah. So the connection is connecting to school by trying to do something. There's a connection, whether that's connecting to a club, whether that's connecting with other students during that hour time, whether that's connecting with a teacher, finding a safe space, whether that's connecting to your academics because you're struggling and you need to make up things or you need more time. So really it's just simply being able to connect, to take pride in the school because you're there and you're involved in something. So it's not just school as school, because again, we're talking about teenagers, and teenagers don't always like school if the school doesn't have a climate and culture where they can be involved as a person, not just coming and learning information, but actually being able to apply their skills, their gifts, their talents in a manner that's not just, I'm getting a grade, or I'm doing well on a test, or I'm having to take tests or complete a project. For some, that's great. For others, that's not what draws them to school at first. So again, we're just trying to be intentional about being able to connect in the building with teachers or administrators or students. And it's really been beneficial, even though, it's like, oh my God, well, everybody's at the school at one time. And, what happens when people, the fact that we see them, most teenagers are creatures of habit. And those habits are usually developed within the first week or two, where they're going to be, who they're going to be with, what their routine is. So if you're observant, we can kind of figure out if something's amiss. They've kind of shown us because they're out of place. And that's a conversation that when we do have things that come up, I can say, well, I see your child usually is outside of the courtyard at the middle table. Well, today they were over on the other side of the courtyard with somebody that they're never with, and that just didn't look right. So so just being observed, and again, intentional. I'm not acting like I didn't see it. No, I saw it, and I'm gonna tell you about it, so you can understand that I do see you. So before you make a poor decision, I'm trying to acknowledge that you probably should pick to do something better before I have to intervene in a different manner. At least that's what I do have to do.
And Sarah, we started this just before COVID, and during COVID, we couldn't have everybody together. So we went almost 2 years without it. And I probably had more complaints about that than anything I've had since I've been at this school. Complaints by teachers because we didn't have it, complaints by students because we didn't have it, and complaints from parents. The buy-in is there, the value is there, the impact it's having on students is there. There are not many programs in a school that you could stop that everybody agreed. You got to get it back. And that's what encourages me. Our summer school numbers are down. The number of students having to come to summer school, that's not the only reason it's down, but it eliminates all excuses. If you're struggling academically, we have a way to fix that. If you're not fitting in, or you have to work, as you said, you have to babysit a sibling in the afternoon, you can still get involved in clubs here because they're during your school day. You don't have transportation, it's not a problem. It's during the school day. And that's got a huge value for our kids to be able to connect with what's going on here.
I want to invite anybody who's listening, if you have a question, you can pop it in the chat and I will try to ask it. I have one light question. Do you guys ever stop by the karaoke club or the other clubs, and do you guys get involved? Do you have a song that you...
Mr. Gray's favorite song is Wagon Wheel.
Tell Darius Rucker I
Good
do
choice.
that, so y'all connect with it.
That's Mr. Gray's favorite song. But again, I used to dabble with maybe some intramurals. I really would like to get into the chess club, but for me, supervising is good. We do a lot of other things throughout the day where we might not be in clubs, but we're in classrooms. So even if that's as different as acting out Romeo and Juliet with the other assistant principal, or just, if somebody asks my opinion, or just being able to shed some light in a discussion that may be going on in the classroom, or doing a math problem, or just being present. Those are things that we get to be able to provide that help, giving words of wisdom, and not being afraid to let students know that, yes, I definitely am paying attention to how you're performing. And if I don't think it's great, I'm going to tell you about it, because I believe that you can do better. You can act better, and you've been raised better, because I might know the people who raised you. So, again, it's being honest. Now, Mr. Gray's favorite day of the week, by the way, is Wednesday. Do you know why Wednesday is his favorite day of the week?
I think I remember, but can you share?
Because it's hump day, and it's hump day. I can't do it because, we're trying to be real formal today, but yes, that is why most people love Graves, because that's what he does every morning when he greets students. And again, before anybody asks a question, meeting and greeting students in the morning with positivity and a smile probably is the reason why we can be as successful in a lot of things, because everybody didn't wake up on the right side of the bed per se, and they may not be in the best mood, but if we're lighthearted and we're trying to be positive, it's kind of hard to be mad at us, because we just trying to brighten you up before we know that you don't have to be at school for 8 hours. Not that we don't love it, but we know that some students don't love it. So, we might as well make you smile. Graves more so than me, but we all bring positive energy at any interest at the beginning of the day, so that they can feel a positive vibe before they start the learning process.
And you guys often start the morning at the bus lot or at the student, the car drop off line. So you're seeing students as they're walking in the door.
Absolutely. And I think that's important. Our teachers know that we're not asking them to do anything we're not willing to do. Every day, Dr. Greene's going to be in the parking lot before and after school. Every day, I'm going to be at the front entrance in the morning and at the bus exit when they're leaving. Every day, Miss Anderson's going to be in the car loop, going to be in the bus areas. And being able to see us, we're not sitting in an office somewhere. We want to be out and about. You saw when you were here, we were out in the cafeteria and in the halls. That wasn't a show. That's what we do. And we want to engage with our students. And it's amazing to see that from a 9th grader to a 12th grader, how that relationship grows with the student. And they come up and talk about some deep stuff sometimes, their life and the things they're facing, but they also share in the good things. And they know we want to celebrate those good things and we want to help them through those tough things.
I learned from my first principal, presence and proximity are so important. So just being able to be seen and then be close. Sometimes you don't have to be as close, but when you get closer, they can feel your presence and they know that, maybe I need to fix this, or maybe we need to have a conversation about it. But again, as Grace says, just being available and being positive along with being present, that helps as well.
So I wanted to ask about this year's graduating class. So these students were freshmen when the pandemic hit. They had that, very important year disrupted. And then their sophomore year, they were on hybrid schedules and it was still not really normal. The last 2 years also have not really been completely normal. So I wanted to, can you talk about how you've had to respond to that and what difficulties that has created and how these sort of systems that you already had in place have helped with that?
Well, as you said, I think our systems that we had in place really helped us through this. We did not allow our students or staff to make excuses during this time. We want to stay focused. We wanted to do what was in the best interest of our students. We didn't lower our standards. We changed how we did things from being out of school to being hybrid to not having assemblies. We had a pep rally at the beginning of this year. And at the end of the pep rally, I said, well, that wasn't as emotional as we usually are. And then we had an aha moment. These kids have never been to a pep rally. Yeah, it had been 3 years. The seniors were the only kids in the building that had a pep rally when they were freshmen. So those kind of things. At our graduation, it was obvious in the speeches that our students gave that it really impacted them, but it meant a lot to them that they were in a caring environment, a small school district, a school district where our students know their teachers, their administrators, their district office staff, the superintendent, the board members. And I think that went a long way because they didn't feel that they were left isolated or that they were just a statistic. They knew people cared about them. So I think those things we had in place really helped, but there's no way to fully understand right now what an impact it had on these students long term. And I think we've tried to do the best we can to try to close those gaps. And we still feel those gaps probably for a couple more years till we really get back to true normalcy, whatever that may be.
So again, Graves is being humble. When we were in COVID, the thing that I remember best was everybody's going through this for the first time. Everybody's been through this before. So before we decide to attack or be in just full teacher mode, we're all new to this. So always keeping everybody grounded about the perspective and understanding that we're all first year teachers in a COVID schedule, or we're all first year teachers doing hybrid, was really instrumental in us, as Mr. Graves had given us the model, to be hope dealers. We're trying to continue to give hope to our students in the midst of a situation, hope to our teachers who are still having to deal with struggles. And you have, again, life outside for adults as well can be challenges and challenging while you're trying to learn a new way of trying to make sure that kids can get a quality education. And then, essentially, sometimes you have to be graceful. Grace before grace was another thing. Before we just make it that it's the grade, let's be patient because this process is new for everybody. So even though we may be able to adjust to it faster, as adults, our kids are not as prepared for the change, and we have to help them to learn how to make the proper adjustments. And I think that was instrumental in us being able to have more of our kids be able to reach those graduation rates, because that was communicated constantly. You know, before you just dismiss somebody, understand maybe in your mentor group or that student who's being mentored by another teacher, that this is their situation. And again, sometimes in certain areas, that conversation may not be had by an administrator, and they may not have the opportunity to. But if we know what that story is, I'm going to share that with you, because you may not be aware, and that might help you to connect, or at least be a little bit more patient before you just not. Because we're going to do, as Grace said, what's in the best interest of our students, because our students are our future.
We've got time just for one last quick question. And there's a question from Stephen. Do you feel this program could be implemented and be successful in a school that has 1,000 to 2,000 students? So double your size. What would be your very quick advice?
I would say yes, go visit other places, visit schools bigger than you, visit schools smaller than you, visit schools your size. And when you visit those places, you're going to get ideas of how they do it. But then you've got to come back and debrief on what works best for you and your students and your staff. Ours doesn't look exactly like everybody else's. We implemented it the way we thought it would best serve our students and our staff.
One of the things that you have to get buy-in from, because it's a change in where people may be able to eat, be, we took our custodians and our lunch staff on one of the trips, so they would understand how it was going to be to serve everybody at the same time, that there would be staggered people who would come, because some would come at the beginning, but we need to be able to have service for some who come at the middle. The kids, when they see that there's everybody there, some don't want to eat at the beginning because they don't want to wait in the line. So, you know, the conversation is, well, I don't like to wait in lines either, so I'm going to wait 15 minutes. When the line gets short, then I'll go eat. But you may have to eat in the classroom. So we shifted so that we had trash cans throughout the building, so that if somebody ate in the classroom, one of our expectations is just don't leave your lunch food there. Take it and put it in a receptacle, and then after lunch, custodians will go around and make sure that, you know, that trash can be picked up, so it doesn't just linger throughout the building. So that was helpful as well. When we saw things that seemed to be problem areas, we modified where we may be able to have students be. We do use our gymnasium. At first we used our small gym, but that was a problem. So now we use our larger gym, and you know, there's a cleanup routine that happens right after that for our custodial staff to address that before third block comes. And it's got to be quick, but it's efficient. And we try to help the kids, try to help make sure that that's not something that we can't do. So that if that's the answer to your question, you just got to have everybody to be on the same page.
Thank you guys both so much. I've enjoyed talking with you guys again, and I hope everyone else has learned from getting to hear from you. I'm going to turn it over now to Robbie Scott. She's the Post and Courier's Community Relations and Communications Director. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. And what a powerful discussion. As we conclude this evening, we'd like to thank panelists Rodney Graves and Jermaine Greene, moderator Sarah Gregory, and executive editor Autumn Phillips. Our event tonight is a fundraiser for the Post and Courier's Education Lab, a 501c nonprofit charity that is founded on the principle that all children in South Carolina deserve equal access to quality public education. The Education Lab is fully funded by donors like you. Tonight, you've heard one example, or as we call them, bright spots, of how a public school used their resources to help students succeed, graduate, and lead productive lives. The Education Lab has and will continue to highlight South Carolina's best educational practices. Likewise, we'll continue to expose inefficiencies and gaps in public education and offer solutions journalism that provides models for success that can be replicated statewide. We encourage you to visit our website, postandcareer.com/education-lab, to learn more about the work we do. And please consider making a donation to sustain impactful solutions-based educational reporting like you've seen this evening at postandcareerfund.com. Thank you all and good night.